but he could be flexible. He was definitely an opponent of slavery and a champion of democracy and the rights of men and women. However, Burns was capable of cheering on the French, such as at the Battle of Valmy and Brussels, over the professional forces of Austria, and yet he was a member of the local yeomanry. The yeomanry was established to defend the United Kingdom from the French, who he cheered on one day, when in actual fact dressed up to oppose them the following day. Burns the radical, the supporter of the French Revolution, Burns the Freemason, a man of contradictions like many of us, myself included. Indeed, there are some who even question Burns and accuse him of far radicalism. But like all of us, there is also within us the need for radical change, and yet within the same breath, the need to conserve what we believe needs conserving. As much as there's the radical in us, there's also the conservative, but we don't always pronounce on it in public places. But the enlightenment of Burns and others is very much still alive today. I know some people don't believe that when they talk about rekindling the Enlightenment. In my opinion, the Enlightenment never died. Although when we listen to Alfred, we know that a dark period appeared in Europe where the lights went out and when the Nazis stormed various countries. And the Enlightenment came to an end for that period. But when we look throughout our own islands, we try to seek what reminds us that Burns' dream is very much alive. People may not agree with me, but I look at things like the NHS, the National Health Service, built on the dream of a health service available to everybody, irrespective of income or position in society. That would easily rhyme with Burns' dreams. Entitlements to education. We haven't solved every problem, but people from all classes can go on to third level education. That would rhyme, most certainly, with Burns' dream of enlightenment. This week in Belfast, we saw one of the biggest trade union gatherings, probably seen in Belfast for 30 or 40 years, or throughout the United Kingdom, when the trade unions organised a rally outside City Hall to protest about lack of pay increases in Northern Ireland, which seemed to be happening in the rest of the UK. But the point was that trade unions could rally, people in their thousands, whereas in other countries, trade unions are banned. In many, many countries, they could not rally like they did in Belfast. So the rights of the worker and the rights of the workers to rally together to demand pay and justice would rhyme with Burns' concept of the Enlightenment. The acceptance of others amongst us, people coming from other lands, to join us and share their experience with us, share their culture with us. This would rhyme with Burns' sense of enlightenment. That Britain, including Burns' beloved Scotland, was one of the first countries, if not the first country, in the world to legislate for LGBT rights, still unique throughout the world. That most certainly would rhyme with Burns' idea of the Enlightenment and the rights of men and women. And we know that throughout the world, Burns' Auld Lang Syne will be sang this week on many a function, and after a lot of Scottish whisky. I prefer whisky with an E in it, really, myself. Burns wrote Auld Lang Syne originally for his Masonic lodge and was sang at certain events. Indeed, Burns was a lifelong member of the Masonic order. And sometimes we forget that at that time the Masonic order was a progressive movement throughout Europe, in Spain, in Portugal, and in France. Indeed, Burns himself is quoted as saying that his support for the Enlightenment came from his membership of the Masons. He was known as the ploughman poet, and he was also a starry-eyed romantic. Indeed, his sexual adventures didn't endear him to the church, although he would have been welcome here. But to get an idea about his commitment to the common man, we get a clear image of that in his poem, A Man's a Man for All That. So we know, at least in his poems, that Burns saw integrity and decency were great, and it was the entitlement of any man or woman to be ennobled. He didn't see those who wore crowns as the only ennobled, but the men and the women who walked the streets, and that he knew. And as I said, he had a great sense of the romantic. We can see this from his words, "Oh, my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love's like the melody that's sweetly played in tune." I like to think that our devotion to our liberal faith rhymes with Robbie Burns. I like to think that non-subscription is inspired by what was then the Scottish Enlightenment. Indeed, we are known as New Light Presbyterians. New light in that we are willing to shine a light in all comers and be inspired by new ideas, be they scientific, be they social, or be they theological. We like to think that as New Light Presbyterians, that a sense of the Enlightenment burns in our DNA, that it's in our roots. New light, new life, sharing those values that are the hope and joy for our community, and how we contribute to making at least Belfast a good home for all who share it. So I hope sometime this week you'll have an opportunity to raise a glass and toast Robbie Burns. Amen.